Hello everybody, it's Mrs. Pound and I'm back with another section from chapter 3.2 on earthquakes. So this section is about faults in 323 in your book. Our objectives today are to describe the three basic fault movements and distinguish between the fault movement of an earthquake and fault creep. So the first type of fault is a normal fault. This is a fault in which the hanging wall slides down the footwall. And the key here is this happens also at divergent plate boundaries where they are going apart. And notice, remember for our hanging wall, we think, see that tip there? We could hang something from that tip. So that determines our hanging wall. And so that is the first type of movement. The second type of movement is a reverse fault. This is a fault in which the hanging wall climbs up the footwall. This happens at convergent boundaries where two plates are coming together. And we see here, again, the hanging wall, we could hang something from it, but the hanging wall is climbing up the footwall in a reverse fault. The third type of fault is a strike-slip fault. This is a fault in which two fault blocks move past each other horizontally. So they're sliding past each other. This happens along a transform boundary. This is what is happening in California at the San Andreas Fault. Now, there is also something called fault creep. This is the slow, almost continuous movement of rock along a fault. So this is very slow. There are no sudden jerks like in an earthquake. So movement of a fault during an earthquake versus fault creep. Okay, so during an earthquake, friction that prevented opposite sides of a fault from moving is suddenly released and one side moves rapidly over a short distance. And you can see here in the background, I tried to choose a rock that looked very jagged, like there would be pieces that got caught and there would be a lot of friction. Pressure would build up and then all of a sudden they would fly apart and you would create an earthquake. During fault creep, the sides of a fault move slowly and steadily because the friction between them is not great enough to stop them. So I tried to show a smoother rock in the background here where you have just it creeping along very slowly so that there's no sudden jerks and it's just nice and smooth and no earthquakes with fault creep. So our objectives for this video are pretty short: to describe the three basic fault movements. That would be our normal fault, our reverse fault, and our strike-slip fault, and distinguish between the fault movement of an earthquake and fault creep. So don't forget your 5 questions.